So here we go into the medieval period, also known as the Middle Ages, of African kingdoms. So these are all the ones in front of you that we're going to talk about. So Kush, also known as Nubia, same place. Axum is spelled two different ways, and the rest you can figure out. So here's the places that we're going to talk about. So we're generally going to be all over the continent of Africa. Before we really start talking about the different kingdoms that we're going to get into, I want you to realize how different Africa is from one place to another. So you can see this topographical map tells you how one area is completely dry, desert, the next area is a semi-desert, and then you get into the steppe grass and the super wet brush, tropical rainforest. I mean, it's just a little bit of everything in Africa. And so these tribes, because they are in different places on the continent, are going to be very, very different from one another because, of course, you make your life around the climate and the geography that you're handed. And so it's going to be a very different place for these different tribes. So let's start with East Africa and Kush, also known as Nubia, and Axum. So the location, that was a little slow. The location of Kush is in the upper Nile River, along the upper Nile River. And you can see it in green over here. So southern end of ancient Egypt. That's pretty easy to find, right? And here's some things that you need to know about Kush. So they are polytheistic. They shared many of the same gods as the Egyptians used. They will mummify people. Now, they're not going to put them in giant pyramids like the Pyramid of Giza and places like that. They're not as powerful, these tombs aren't. But they do mummify people, and they do put them in pyramids. Now, their pyramids are flat-topped. The Egyptians, of course, are pointed. So they do have kind of their own culture in there as well. And gold and iron are the two things they're going to trade the most. And they are going to trade with the Egyptians who helped them create their culture. They're also going to trade with the Middle East and the Mediterranean. It's not like they're going very far. They're right there kind of at that crossroads between all of these places. So Kush cannot keep up with the demand for iron, and iron is the number one thing that they are going to be able to trade with people, but they can't keep up with it because in order to make iron into something that somebody wants, you have to be able to heat it up and bang the crud out of it until it becomes something. And so the only thing that they had in the area of Kush to make a fire, to heat up the iron, was trees, cut down the trees. It never dawned on them that when you cut down a tree, you should probably replace it with 2 or 3 trees. So eventually they cut down all the trees and could no longer make anything out of iron. They could still dig it, but they can't make anything out of it. They have no way to make a fire. And so traders are going to start looking in other places for their iron, and Kush is going to become very, very weak economically. And of course, when your economy falls, everything starts to fall apart. And so let's find out what's going to happen to these poor people. The kingdom that is very, very close to them is Axum. Again, you can spell it both ways. So look here on the map. You can see how close together they are from one another. So it's not like it was a giant leap to go in and take them over. And remember that you can spell Axum either way, and it's perfectly correct. They will come into power or existence around 400 AD, and you can see from the picture that kingdom is going to touch both the Ethiopian highlands and the Nile River. This place is very, very famous then and now, not just because of the powerful kingdom that came to be there, but because many people believe that this is the home of the Ten Commandments. The tablets that were given to Moses on Mount Sinai ended up here. And so that is going to make them a place that people look at even today to see if that is true. Now, there's like 13 places across the planet that claim to have the Ten Commandments, so we don't really know who. And let me explain to you why on the next slide. So Axum is monotheistic. Let's talk about that first. And they're going to be the first Christian kingdom in Africa that we know of. And this biblical artifact that some people believe is still there is again the tablets that are that have the Ten Commandments. Now here's what was supposed to have happened. So the Israelites have escaped from Egypt with Moses leading them. They stop at Mount Sinai. He gets the tablets from God, with, our moral code, the Ten Commandments, and they travel on to Israel, back to Israel, to make their home. So when they get back to Israel, of course, the people have moved into their place, and there's going to be a lot of fights, and so it became understood that the tablets needed to be protected. There was a lot of war going on, and so they built an ark, the Ark of the Covenant, this golden, beautiful box. They built it to keep the tablets safe, and the tablets were buried, supposedly, buried deep under a castle for protection. So the castle eventually is going to be overrun, and supposedly the king at the time, and we don't know who, like people are really bad about time and names in this time period, so we're not sure what king was supposed to have given the order, but the king gives the order for this place to for the box to be removed. The man who is asked to remove it, his name has been lost in history, but we do know that he was actually from Axum, this guy. So that part has remained intact in history. So it makes sense that if he was told to take this Ark of the Covenant and run, go someplace safe, wouldn't he go home with it? And so a lot of historians believe that Axum has more, logistically, they have more of a chance of actually truly having the real Ark of the Covenant. There are multiple Arks of the Covenant. You can't open it. Nobody wants to open it, because what if you open it and you don't have the tablets? So nobody wants to open up any of their Arks of the Covenant across the world. Even Ireland has one that they swear is the original Ten Commandments. So nobody's ever going to open this. So there is a monk that has to watch over the Ark of the Covenant. He is chosen, and it's a great honor when he's chosen, but it is a lifelong duty, and in that lifetime he is not allowed to talk to another living soul. They don't want him listening to the radio. There's no TV, there's nothing. They don't want him to be corrupted by the outside world and possibly be convinced to open up this Ark of the Covenant and prove or disprove the existence of the tablets inside. So what a life that would be, right? But it's their claim to fame. Now, don't forget, because this is one of the most important things about Axum, it is, like I said, the first Christian kingdom in Africa. Now, this is going to end up being a bad thing, because others around them are going to turn to Islam. And so the Christians are left there all by themselves in the middle of an Islamic sea. And, of course, Muslim people are going to trade with Muslims before they're going to trade with Christians. And so Axum is going to have an issue with that. And so here we go. Islam's going to take over. The Christian empire of Axum is pushed to the side because of the trade market, just like I said. Axum is going to decline very, very quickly around the year 600. And so they were only a powerhouse, and yes, they were indeed a powerhouse, for about 200 years. So Islam really ran them into the Ethiopian highlands. So Axum is still there as a place today, and the people that were the original Axum people, their relatives are still around in the Ethiopian highlands. So we are done with Cush and Axum. Don't forget, Cush came first. Axum takes them over. Axum is going to be run out because of the new religion of Islam. So now we are on to southern Africa, and we're going to look at an empire known as Zimbabwe. Now this is a pretty good picture of what Zimbabwe looks like. So you can see it's pretty desolate. Things don't grow there super well, and this is going to dictate what type of life the people in Zimbabwe will live then and now. All right, so Zimbabwe comes around between the 1100s and exists as an empire or a great kingdom until the 1400s. So again, it's located in South Africa between two very necessary rivers, the Zambezi and Limpopo. Say that fast 3 times. And they are also along the Indian Ocean coast. So lots of waterways for them to have easy trade because you can get around very quickly. So looking at the picture, wouldn't you select to build right there? Of course you would. So their empire is known as Zimbabwe, and the main city, the city that will be their capital, is known as the Great Zimbabwe. So the city and the empire are basically the same thing, named the same thing, sorry. All right, so the capital of the empire of Zimbabwe, again, is the Great Zimbabwe, a city, and it is part of a trade network there. So scholars think Great Zimbabwe was part of this network where they didn't really have anything to trade. Remember, I showed you the territory. It's like you can't grow anything. They do mine a little bit for gold. They have a few crops, but the crops are just enough to feed their own people because the area is so desolate and very little rain falls there. So they end up creating the role of the middleman for themselves because they are at a great crossroads of trade. So they're going to be the middleman between other gold miners, one's much more profitable than them, and ivory hunters in southern Africa. So every time somebody comes into their city to trade, they charge them taxes, and that's how they make money, and they make a lot of money. So here's what it looks like. This is the Great Zimbabwe, the city of the Great Zimbabwe. So here's some more up-close pictures of it. 18,000 people lived here once, and then for some reason in the 1400s, and we do not know why, they simply picked up and walked away. There is no evidence that they were invaded, that there was sickness, there's no massive graveyards anywhere. They just picked up and they walked away. So these are the great stone ruins. We know that their government was very, very powerful because they do have this giant stone structure. And when you came in to sell goods in the Great Zimbabwe, you had to go through this outer tunnel where it was heavily guarded, and that way they knew nobody could get in or out nobody could get in without paying taxes, and nobody could get out, if they stole something. So it was a pretty cool setup, and then just to walk away from it, just nobody knows why. Very odd. This is going to happen several times in the history of mankind. I know this is like a whirlwind, but here we are. We're done with Zimbabwe. Capital is the Great Zimbabwe. They were the middleman for trade, and now we are moving on to the Congo, a whole different type of environment in the wonderful continent, beautiful continent of Africa. So the Kingdom of the Congo existed from the 1390s to 1857. Their most popular and the one that did the most for this kingdom is Lukenenimi. When he took over, it was a very, very highly populated area, and he decided to make it a mandate that rather than have the people sprawled out where it was hard to get in contact with each other, that he would have everybody live in pretty close proximity to one another, safety in numbers, and that way he always had a standing military. This area of Africa was and is very, very dangerous. There are a lot of people in the area that wanted the stuff the Kingdom of the Congo had. They were a rich kingdom, and there were not so rich kingdoms living all around them that wanted their stuff. But geographically, it's a dangerous area. There are very dangerous animals living in the Congo, and we'll talk more about them in a minute. But that's why Lukenenimi wanted safety in numbers and to always have a standing military. So in the beginning, they're going to trade things like ivory, copper, and salt. Eventually, that's going to change, and we will come back to what they start trading later in a few slides down the road. So here's a map. Today, the Republic of the Congo and the Democratic Republic of the Congo are two different entities, but in the day of Lukenenimi, they were all just called the Kingdom of the Congo. So the Kingdom of the Congo is, of course, named after the Congo River, the river that gives this kingdom life. Yes, the river is spelled with a C, the kingdom is spelled with a K. So that river is 6 miles across at the mouth, and it is the deepest river in the entire world. We actually don't know how deep it is. Nobody's been able to make it to the bottom. It is also the second largest in all of Africa at 2,900 miles, with, of course, the Nile being the longest. even today, because the area is so swampy and there's some pretty nasty animals that live in this area, even today there's very few roads. So then and now, most people, to get from one place to another in the Congo area, will use this Congo River, which means massive numbers of people on not so well made boats. And I can't say enough, danger, danger, danger. So if you sink, there are animals in that water that will eat your face. There are animals along the sides of the bank that will eat your face. And within the water itself, scientists pour into this area even now because there is so much unique life there. It's things you cannot find anyplace else on the planet. So currently we are at 700 species that have been discovered in the Congo River that do not exist anywhere else. And it seems like the numbers just keep going up day after day after day. Now the river itself is very, very dangerous. It twists and turns. The tides and the currents are very, very quick. It is so twisty and windy that it actually crosses the equator twice. And look at this, waterfalls. So you would hear it definitely, but there have been cases of people that you couldn't see it coming, because look how glassy it is at the top of the fall. You would hear it, but you may not know in time where it's coming from, and people have gone over these falls. And this is the type of boat that you would find on these waterways. Very overcrowded, very poorly made. There are a lot of deaths reported along that Congo River very often. Not daily, but pretty often. And these are the type of animals that you would find there. The tiger fish. No, thank you. Now you would see some neat stuff too, like elephants. How cool is that? I love elephants. There are a lot of gorilla families that also live along the banks of the river. They don't really mess with people too much unless you're messing with them. But they're cool to look at, right? Still scary though, out in the wild. You also have many boa constrictors. So this snake has obviously eaten something or someone. And look at how big of a thing it might be that it took down. Alligators are also in the water. I love this, the alligator with the chickens. And hippopotami are in the water. And hippopotamuses, I guess that's how you say it, hippopotamuses are more deadly than alligators or crocodiles. Did you know that? Remember King Menes of Egypt, who was mauled by one of these guys? Yeah, so they are nasty, nasty creatures. You do not want to mess with them. But all of this is in and around the Congo River. So I told you that they started trading something besides the original goods of gold and salt and things like that. There was a leader of the Kingdom of the Congo by the name of Alfonso. And Alfonso decided to start dealing with the Portuguese alone. He would only trade with the Portuguese. So the Portuguese came to him with the idea of the slave trade in 1526. Now Alfonso, he wasn't all okay with the slave trade at all, but the Portuguese had been coming in and illegally taking people that mattered, kings and queens and rich people, and who cares about the poor people, right? But he wanted to make it so that it was actually a business, and it was only people who had done bad things or were a burden to their society, and then he would sell them to the Portuguese, and he wanted to set it up so that he made money for his people in his kingdom. He wanted to open schools, and for a while it works. He does use the money to open up schools. The people of the Kingdom of the Congo become very, very literate because of this guy. He turns to Christianity, and he starts realizing that the Portuguese they're still not abiding by the rules. They're taking people that they have not asked for. They're not paying the taxes that they were promised that they would pay. And so Alfonso starts to get upset, and he writes to the Portuguese king and says, I don't want any more foreign people here except for teachers and missionaries. Please stop sending your people. I don't want any more of my people to be stolen. So by this time period, you've got 15,000 a year that were being ripped out of the Congo. And this is straight from him. Each day the traders are kidnapping our people, children of this country, sons of our nobles and vassals, even people of our own family. And so that's part of a letter that he wrote to the Portuguese government saying, please stop this, stop this. Portuguese government, you know what they did? They put a hit out on him. And so Alfonso, it shut him up. He didn't want to die, and he didn't want his family hurt. And so Alfonso basically throws his hands in the air, and the Portuguese have free reign to start taking slaves. So eventually he is going to actually reach out to the Pope in 1540, Pope Gregory XIV. We don't know if Pope Gregory purposely let it leak out to the Portuguese government or if it was an accident, but somehow the Portuguese government found out that now Alfonso was talking to the Pope, and they sent 8 people to a Sunday Easter service to kill Alfonso. It doesn't happen, but Alfonso is never seen in public again. We don't really know how he died. Some people say he developed agoria, where he was afraid to be out in public. Who knows what happened to this man? But again, this was his one last attempt to stop that slave trade in his home, and it's not going to happen. And so the slave trade, the African slave trade, it just explodes because of this. Now, these people are so unique. I just think this is incredibly unique. They were very, very artistic people. These are the grave markers that have been uncovered by archaeologists. So just incredibly fantastic, artsy people that were basically destroyed because of the slave trade. So we got to remember that the evils of slavery, like, it brought a lot of people down. It did damage across the planet. Are you tired yet? This trip around Africa is fast. All right, so Kush and Axum, we are done with you guys. We are done with Zimbabwe. We have finished with the Congo. And now we are going to move on to the northwestern part of Africa, and we will look at Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. All right, so here's your 3 kingdoms. You can see again how different it is, desert-like up here. So it starts with Ghana around 790 AD, and it is in West Africa along the Niger River, which is south of the Sahara Desert. So you know it's going to be super dry there. The big thing that they trade is salt for gold, and they use camel caravans. Remember, we talked about the caravans before, safety in numbers, and these guys have a path across the Sahara Desert so they don't die along the way. They're very good at survival in this kind of environment. These guys practice animism, and it's a very, very different type of religion. They believe that a spirit resides in all things natural. So they are very peaceful people, because if you step on a blade of grass, there might be a spirit in it. If you throw a stone, there might be a spirit in it, and they don't want to hurt any spirits. And so they are very, very kind, careful, respectful people. So what's going to happen to Ghana, and how is Islam involved? Islamic invaders are going to take them over, and eventually Ghana is going to just simply fade away. They didn't like the idea of animism, and so these Muslims felt it was kind of their duty to get rid of the animism and make the area Islamic. All right, so Ghana is gone, and Mali moves in over top of them. So Mali is around from 1200 to 1450, again West Africa, bigger though, still along the Niger River, still south of the Sahara. These guys have their first really big trading city in the city of Timbuktu. So Timbuktu was a crossroads of trade. If you see it on the map, it's right there at the tip of the Niger River. So anybody coming out of the Sahara Desert with goods can hook up with the Timbuktu, can hook up with the Niger River in Timbuktu, and they say it's where the desert meets the water, and so you could take your goods on the Niger River, and it was great for trade. So Timbuktu became the city to go to as a crossroads of trade between the Sahara and the Niger River. So again, these guys are going to be Islamic because they took over Ghana and got rid of animism. So now these guys are Islamic. They will do the exact same thing for trade that the Ghana people did, salt and gold. Mali will end when a major ruler died, and for some reason, we don't know why, nobody could decide who should take his place. We don't know if nobody was willing to or if there was an argument over it, but there's no big battle to kill these people of Mali off. It just kind of fades away. I told you, some of this history is just like you want to say, what? Then the third one in this area is Songhai. So Songhai comes in on top of Ghana and Mali, where they existed. It's going to be even bigger. Of course, it absolutely is going to encompass Timbuktu and the Niger River. Still same location, south of the Sahara Desert, but make sure you keep in mind that they will keep Timbuktu as a center of trade and learning. So during the Songhai period, you've got lots of colleges that are opening up. You've got lots of mosques that have never been around before that are now being built. So Songhai was a very large, beautiful place. But like those before them, there's not a whole lot to do there. They're going to stay Islamic, of course, and guess what they're going to trade? You will never guess. Of course, salt and gold. So Songhai is going to crumble under the invasion of some Moroccans in the 1500s. So there you go. You have Ghana, Mali, and Songhai all on top of each other. Easiest part of the entire unit, right? So this is the last slide. Boy, that was quick. Just know that all three, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, that should be a song, right? Ghana, Mali, Songhai, they all trade gold and salt and other items too, but that's the big things, gold and salt. And the way that they trade is across the Sahara Desert very, very often, so they had to develop actual paths that people could use, these caravans, and survive the Sahara Desert. And so those paths become known as the Trans-Saharan trade routes. And of course, people will pop up along these trade routes with water and places to sleep and things like that. So they become very, very distinct and practiced trade routes through the Sahara Desert. All right, that's it, guys. I wish that we had more time. Africa is a beautiful continent, super interesting, but that's all I got for you. So I will see you in the next unit.